Hello and welcome to the first 24 lines per second of 2013. This is Guernsey's only dedicated movie podcast. I'm Winter Tyson, with me are Claire Mockett.
Hello.
And Russ Calloway.
Hi.
And this is episode 19, Pi and Smash. In this episode we will be looking at 5 movies. At the cinema we've been watching The Life of Pi, Jack Reacher, Les Miserables and Gangster Squad, and on DVD/Blu-ray we finally got a chance to watch Dredd. First up, it's story time with The Life of Pi. Directed by Ang Lee and based on the mega-selling book by Yann Martel, Life of Pi tells the story of a young man who finds himself shipwrecked and adrift with only a tiger for company. Russ, what is your take on this? You've read the book, haven't you?
I have.
How was it?
So I read the book a number of years ago, which was quite a good thing in the end because, you know, I think often I think it's always best to read the book first, but then I think that does inevitably hamper your experience of the film, and so, but yeah, that's just a catch-22 that I don't think you can get out of. Because I mean, I've tried to go back and read books after watching films, and I've really struggled through them because I almost need the narrative drive of not knowing what's going on to enjoy reading a book. Whereas a film, I can kind of sit there and still enjoy it, but I do feel I wouldn't kind of enjoy it as much.
Right. Okay.
I was lucky with this. I think because of its kind of tag of being an unfilmable book, it's obviously taken quite a number of years to get to the screen. I think it's at least 10 years since the book was out. And I remember reading it and remember loving it. I thought it was a brilliant book, and like I say, it just really stuck with me for a very long time. Especially, it's got a fantastic ending to it, which is kind of, you know, really, really great and really enjoyable. So I went in there kind of with very high hopes. So I hadn't heard a bad thing about it. And for one, I'd heard that, you know, Ang Lee had done a really good job of it. That it was kind of, you know, thrilling and exciting, but yet still kind of hit upon that book's central kind of themes and so on and so forth. And came out of it feeling very much the same way. I really did enjoy it. I thought it was a great film. And right from the beginning, it's got that kind of sense of real childish kind of playfulness to it. You know, throughout there's a very kind of extended credit sequence at the beginning, which is very, you know, playful and you know, kind of happy and sets the scene very well at the same time, which is very nice. And I thought it dealt with everything very well. I mean, I think the effects are very good. They're amazing. It's one of the few films that I sat and watched and thought, oh, do you know what? I wouldn't actually mind watching this in 3D. You know, I've not really been with 3D up until now, but I think Ang Lee did a very good job of making this with that in mind. And there are a few sequences, I think, in particular that he specifically made for 3D that would have kind of looked stunning in that environment. Without getting too kind of deep and meaningful about it, because it is that kind of book. You know, it is a book based around themes of religion and faith and you know and certain belief systems and so on, and kind of, you know, what that means. You know, the story itself is revealed at the start with the main character telling the author that he's relating his story to, that he's got a story that will make him believe in God. You know, which is, you know, normally I'd turn off. I'm an atheist. I have no interest really in kind of any religion as such, but I do think that by the end of this film, it does possibly offer up one of the most compelling arguments for faith I've ever seen on film, to be honest with you. You can't really talk about it without giving it away. But I think the very simple message at the heart of this film does strike very close to the point of why a lot of people have faith, in terms of choosing to believe in something is often you know, a better option than not, you know, in terms of backing up your own faith. You know, I don't have it, but I can understand that's one of the few arguments I can understand as to why someone would have that faith. So you know, for me, multi-layered, you know, interesting. I didn't even, normally I say things are too long, but I didn't think it was too long. It kind of it worked out quite nicely to me. I thought the acting was great, especially of, you know, the young Indian actor, you know, kind of well plucked from obscurity to play the role. So yeah, I would recommend it, but I would still recommend reading the book.
Now, I've got a question about the book. In you've already mentioned this. There's sort of a book-ending sort of to this film, whereby there's a writer looking for a story, and he, you know, Pi is telling his story to the writer. Is that in the book?
I do not think it is. I don't think that framing device is used. No, it's very much more a narration of the story of his life, and then at the end, it's, you know, it kind of comes into that just more explaining how things went. There isn't that framing device, because obviously in the film, the character that Rafe Spall plays is supposed to be the author of the book. Yeah,
that's what I thought.
As far as I'm aware, no, that isn't the case in the book.
Because that's the one bit of this film I sat there, every time I went back to it, I thought I could really do without this. And then at the end, there is literally a moment where he says, oh, so the symbolism is blah, 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 after we've just watched it. And I'm sat there thinking, well, why are you telling me? Plus, within the story, there is an exactly almost identical framing device going on with insurance agents.
Yes.
And
yes.
so it really annoyed me because the problem is you had an author searching for a story and searching for wonder, whereas you had insurance agents looking for fact. And would the point not have been better made had
that not been there?
Had he not been there, and maybe just make one of the insurance agents American if that was the problem with that little situation. Anyway, I mean, I've got to say, I thought it was a beautiful film. I thought it was a really nice film. One of those films you can very uncynically just sit there and let it wash over you. I like the changing aspect ratios as well. I like the fact that we're starting to see a bit more of that. I did not like the changing aspect ratio that made a fish jump out of the screen at one point because it's a cheap gag, and it made the screen smaller in the cinema. It makes no sense whatsoever. But I've got to say, it's one of those films you go, oh, that was perfectly nice. But now, the framing device is this idea of, I will tell you a story that will make you believe in God. Is that so explicit in the book?
Yeah, I believe. See, we're talking 10 years
ago.
Yeah,
no,
I
know.
But I believe it is. It is about telling the reader, I have a story for you.
See, because the problem is with the framing device, it makes it a long walk for a short drink. Because it's one of those, the argument they have at the end of, well, the point of the film is within the film anyway. And when they literally say it, you go, my reaction is just go, well, no. Do you know what I mean? And I think depending on how you take that last moment, you kind of think it's almost like a massive setup to a very weak punchline. And it damages sort of what was in between, because what's in between is really nice. It's really good fun. God, it's real kind of... Some moments of it are really quite bracing. And the night I saw it, there were loads of kids in the cinema. And they were all really enjoying it. There were loads of gas, loads of, it's a monkey, it's a zebra. Really enjoying sort of the spectacle of meerkats, the spectacle of the film and all that. But I just, framing device just really annoyed me. And I'm sat there all the way through thinking, you've only got that to appease... idiots or something. But you know what I mean? You can see someone said, well, I don't know much about it. You just get an impression of some executive sat somewhere going, well, it's all very well, Ang, but what does the end mean? What does it mean? Please have someone explain it. And they've wrapped this thing around it. I don't know. It was like lovely film, and then just like so close. It would have been, I think it would have been a classic. I think it would have been like a classic bit of cinema. And sort of like an art house blockbuster sort of thing. But for that, I'm sorry to go on about it. It just really annoyed me. You know, ever watch a film and you just think there's one bit in the film you're thinking, why would you? What? Oh.
Yeah, I mean, I know what you mean. I mean, I didn't have so much of a problem with it. I mean, I'm a massive Rafe Spall fan. I like him. I
love him. I'm watching The Shadow Line right now.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
That is properly amazing. And so, like I say, it didn't bother me too much because I thought him and the actor who was playing the older Pi were actually very good and very engaging.
They are. They're very
good. So it didn't annoy me as much as you.
It winds me up but it was there in the film.
Yeah.
Why wasn't he an insurance agent?
Yeah, of course. I mean, like I say, I agree. When I read it, I found it was a strange addition. It was, but like I say, it didn't ruin anything for me. Like I say, it didn't enhance it. I don't think it was needed. But it didn't ruin for me. Like, and I was the same. I was sat in the cinema and there were gasps and there were laughs. It was a very nice atmosphere.
It was very full cinema,
and that kind of sums up. I think it kind of sums up the film. It's a very lovely, enjoyable, exciting, emotional, kind of film. And it takes you on that roller coaster really well and really effectively.
Okay, so none of us saw Quartet, unfortunately, because, Billy Connolly film, who'd want to miss that. So next up is Gangster Squad, Warner Brothers' unashamed routine to their genre-crunching glory years. Or is it? Here's the story. A bunch of cops go up against a bunch of gangsters in a fight for the control of Los Angeles, and then there is some fighting and some more fighting. Am I selling this a bit short, Claire?
Well, to be honest... whilst I was watching the film, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and while I was sat there in the cinema, I thought this is some great entertainment. And then afterwards I was thinking, actually, that's the video game L.A. Noire, and it's a video game in film format, and it's like someone said, we want to make a film of this, we won't be able to get the rights, let's just do this film. And I would have liked to have seen how the film would have played out with actors of a lesser caliber, because you've got Sean Penn, Ryan Gosling, what's the
Ryan
name?
Gosling being very
Emma
strange.
Stone. He had a very strange accent, and I just thought they've kind of taken it's set in 1949 at the end of the war. So all these people are coming back from the war. The war's over, but yet they have another war to fight to save their city. So the whole kind of plot was there, and the violence was there. The
very violent.
femme fatale was there.
Mm-hmm.
So it basically had a brilliant recipe for the film, and during the film thoroughly enjoyed it. Came away from the film thinking, actually, yeah, that was a video game just played in live action. We've seen it a lot before with Warren Beatty, even though there was the comic. What was the film with the
Dick Tracy?
Dick Tracy type
That's all
of.
I was. Every time I saw Sean Penn, I kept thinking,
Yes.
Dick Tracy, and it got
Yeah.
a bit more sort of annoying each time.
Yeah, and so I mean, fantastic acting. You can't really, with the script that they had, it was, they did bloody well with it.
Oh, I think they all did exactly what they were supposed to do in those roles.
But with actors who weren't so fine in their art form, I think it would have taken away a lot from what they delivered. So, for me, just thoroughly great entertainment for a couple of hours.
Yeah, I got to say, it was, I enjoyed it whilst I was watching it, but
Yeah.
there were sort of things did creep in. I remember the film to compare it to, I suppose, is Untouchables. I know some people don't like it when you compare films to other ones, but tough. But the reason is it's got the characters from Untouchables in it. It's got the brainy guy. It's got the guy brought in to do the brainy stuff. It's got the guy who's essentially like a sort of a mad dog. It's got the guy, it's got the immigrant.
All the stereotypes.
So on and so forth. They're all in there. But it doesn't have. The Untouchables had an actual plot because they had this idea of get the ledger, get the accountant, and it gave you sort of a storyline to follow. Whereas this just didn't. It was literally like they raided someone, they got a bit annoyed and sort of did some bad stuff, and they raided them again, and it just went. I just found it was kind of a back and forth, and the characters none of them had character arcs. They were all. I found them all exact right at the start of the movie. Josh Brolin said, "Oh, it's my city, and I'm gonna go and smash these people in the face." And at the end, he was like, "Well, I've smashed them in the face."
Yeah.
I've
won my war.
Gosling, very odd. I found him to be a very odd presence, and there was a really bad continuity error when a certain unfortunate event, to coin a phrase there, sort of happens to one of the characters. Someone takes off a burning coat and drops it on the floor, then walks out wearing a coat.
Yes, yeah.
Just like,
I remember that part. Yeah.
That's not even like that's not like a bit of lipstick or a glass moving hands, is it? I mean,
there was big continuity.
Awful. But I mean, it's I think a bit like one of the films we'll chat about later. It's nice to see a film that's unashamedly pulpy in all senses of the word. It's nice to see someone go, yeah, you know what? Machine guns and punches to the face.
It's called Gangster Squad.
Yeah, and that's quite nice. But I don't think anyone will really remember it, to be honest.
No, you remember it while you're watching it. But another thing I noticed was the stock quality, and it was the digital quality of the film. It made it was kind of it looked very digital. There was almost a funny filter on it, because I noticed towards the end of the film, I don't know whether they would change anything, but I noticed it looked very, very digital and video gamey. And I thought maybe that was their whole concept all the way through, is just to literally make a video game into a film. And so some of the fight sequences at the end just totally removed that in being engulfed in it too. I'm actually watching something that someone's scripted, and it totally just fell flat at the end. So halfway through, when it got to kind of like the second plot or second objectives, you kind of were into it, and then it just started to fall, and especially because the main character, his wife was pregnant throughout. That was the only thing that was making any kind of what's the word, conflict. And apart from that, there wasn't anything conflict.
Cause she was just like, oh, given if I was, I'd pick your Gangster Squad.
Yeah.
Well, I shouldn't say that, obviously, but I like to say entertaining enough. But as soon as we walked out, me and my brother we sat in the car and just went, yeah, but
all the butts come in afterwards, but enjoyable in the cinema.
Our third film today is Jack Reacher, and I'm only laughing because it's actually quite a disappointing week, but things will get better, I'm sure. Anyway, based on the mega-selling novels by Lee Childs, Jack Reacher stars Tom Cruise as a titular hero who turns up just days after a mass shooting. But is there more to meets the eye? Is something else happening here at all? And why do people keep employing Rosamund Pike? She's uniformly awful in everything.
Have you been speaking with my wife?
Oh, does she not? Does she not rate her either?
She can't stand the sight of her. And I actually took my wife to watch this film with me, and she was like, "Oh, Rosamund Pike's." And I said, "Well, look, give her a chance. She might be quite good." Nope, can't act.
She was
Can't
Lady
act.
Penelope, wasn't she?
She
in
does.
Thunderbirds?
Yeah, she does staring very well, but that is it. It's very strange how she keeps getting work. I was defending her, but maybe I'm on the minority end. Apparently, it's a bit strange. Jack Reacher.
Jack Reacher.
Yeah, it was alright. It's one of those where I've read the books. I haven't read all the books, but I've read a selection of them. They're cracking little pulpy yarns that rattle on for 350 pages. You know what's going to happen, and in the same way that the film does. You shouldn't expect the film to be any different. You start the film. One thing that I will say for it is I thought the first 5-10 minutes were really tense. I was sat in the cinema, and there's a sniper lining up to take shots on people, and there were gasps. So I was like, "Oh no, don't shoot the child!" Obviously it had come a week after events in the US and so on. I think that certainly played on my mind at the time, which I didn't think would come up. So that was great. I would also like to say that I have no problem with Tom Cruise playing this part. I know in the book the guy's 6'7" or whatever, but all the bump about saying that Tom Cruise can't play this part is rubbish. Tom Cruise he's proven in films like Collateral and other things that he can play against type. He can play the bad guy. Yeah. And honestly, I thought he did a fine job. He can dispense a hard-ass one-liner better than a lot of people can, to be honest with you. And he looks the part, and that's fine. Werner Herzog turns up for a laugh with a milky eye, which is great and interesting and not fun, I suppose. It's too long, funnily enough, having said about the first film. It's definitely about half an hour too long. I think it clocks in at 2 hours. And it's definitely a 90-minuter. It's supposed to be pulpy, it's supposed to be fun. But yeah, I mean, I'm almost the same as you guys said about Gangster Squad. You walk out the cinema, and what's the best? One of the reasons we all go to the cinema is that you come out of the cinema and you want to talk about what you've just seen.
Yeah.
Whereas you come out of the cinema with this, you turn to the person and you say, like that, yeah, it was alright. Oh well, off we go. Let's go home, because that's it. There's no depth. There's no anything else to it. There's not even. I mean, it's just not very interesting. I would argue the character is more interesting on the page than he is on the screen, because he is like a bunch of signifiers. He ex-military.
Well, he turns up. He buys. There's a really quite a good scene, I think, where he goes to a thrift store, buys some clothes. Those are the clothes he's going to wear for the rest of his time in town.
Yeah.
And then he
doesn't carry a suitcase. He's got some really great assets, facets to him as well as looking for. And that's where I think they're the best parts. There are some bits that don't necessarily translate so well to film. I mean, there is a bit where he kicks the living crap out of about 5 or 6 guys, and then when the police turn up, he just fades into the crowd who all just take him in and we'll protect you. And you're odd. There's probably some people in there who wouldn't like you to stand next to them because you're clearly a slightly violent maniac. That was what I thought. I was like, because that worked in the book, you don't really question it, but on film, you're like, if I'd just seen a guy beat 4 guys to a pulp, I wouldn't really want to stand next to him and give him my hat to hide from the police. So yeah, I mean, that's it really. It's okay. It's enjoyable. If there's a second one, I might even go and watch it because they're all right. But it's not gonna cause any massive waves in the historical fabric of cinema.
No, I mean, I thought it had there were 3 problems with it, and I qualify this by saying it was all just perfectly well done. It was pretty good. The acting in it's all right, apart from Pike, and it is what it is. One, Herzog massively overbalances the whole thing because he turns up and he just plays Werner Herzog. And there's a bit where a character says, "Who's that?" and he stood in the shadows, and my brother just went, "It's Werner Herzog." And every time you see him, you go, "I'm Werner Herzog."
And I think,
he doesn't match.
He's too weird for the normality of the plot.
For me, it's like Jude Law in Road to Perdition. I think I'd have quite liked to have seen the film Jude Law thought he was in. As opposed to the rest of it. But it's just one of those performances you think, that's a really... It's great seeing Werner Herzog play a bad guy in a Hollywood film, but that's he should have played a bad guy in a Mission Impossible, not in this type... Not that this is realistic, But the other problem with it is the plot, the actual reasons why things happen. I did sit there and think, what is that it?
Doesn't really.
Sorry, they did all of this for what? Surely this is a legal matter.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But it's one of those, one of those plots. You
Yeah.
kind of at the end you go, well, this doesn't make.
It wasn't
any
like
sense.
world domination or anything, was it? It was like
No.
building company, want more jobs.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That was
This
kind
is
of
civil
it.
litigation
Yeah.
and like PFI sort of stuff. And then I mean the third bit is that it's television. I'm afraid. I mean, there's loads of stuff. Now I can't think of a bloody thing. Like The Mentalist and
yeah.
Jim Caviezel.
No, and things like 24 and anything
All
like
that. It's guy turns up, bit of a badass, is a badass, and this to me was like the pilot for something that someone like I said Jeffrey Dean Morgan before, but someone like Neil McDonough from Minority Report and Band of Brothers would have been really good. And you know what? When it went to an hour long, it justified. That's the thing I was trying to think of with Timothy
Oliphant.
or whatever he's called. But it's just a TV pilot with a megastar and Werner Herzog.
Yeah.
And all the other actors in it. To be fair, they've probably been in the TV pilot. No, nothing wrong with that. But it's just not. There's just nothing really to it, was there?
No, like
It
I
didn't
said,
even
that
have
was
the fun of something like Walk Tall.
no,
which was
that's
just ridiculous.
That was the one thing, and I think it had its moments, but they weren't many. It wasn't enough moments of that. Of kind of those. I suppose the problem was he didn't want to tip it. There's always the danger there. That's the balancing point, isn't it? Whether you could have the fun and the slight comedy edge, but still keep it serious.
Great
So
one-liners. I
Yeah,
really
yeah,
enjoyed some of those.
And I say, and they work, but I mean, it's just a bit meh, isn't it? It was just kind of a bit of something and nothing. And like you said, it's Sunday afternoon. Well, that's a bit violent for Sunday afternoons, but if it was on Channel 4 on a Saturday night, you'd tune in and catch
you mentioned
it.
that, but it was 12A. I was quite surprised by what was in the film for a 12A.
Yeah.
And yet again, I found myself sat there thinking, if I'd have brought my kid, who was even a 12-year-old, to see this at cinema, I don't think I'd have been too happy with this.
You need to
Anyway,
write some letters.
it's a bugbear. It's
It's
just
a
a bugbear
bugbear.
of mine, but 12A is all Our fourth film tonight is Les Miserables. Let's have a trailer.
I'm cold. Would you let me stay here for tonight? I know who you are. You're Jean Valjean. Right, my girl. On your way.
Had a dream my life would be. Help me, please, I have a child. So different from this, how I'm living. So different, no, from what it seems.
Where is your child?
No life has killed the dream.
One day more. Is that? Another day, another destiny. Mademoiselle. It's never-ending road to Calvary. Where's the child, Cosette?
Tomorrow you'll be worlds away.
Who was that girl?
Cosette.
And yet with you my world has started.
But he never saw me there.
One day more to revolution. We'll nip it in the bud. We'll be ready for these schoolboys. They'll make themselves with blood. One day to the barricades!
Directed by Tom Hooper or Hopper?
Hooper.
Tom Hooper.
It's got two O's, isn't it?
Oh, has it?
I think so.
Someone said Hopper yesterday.
They're wrong.
We're off point. Anyway, directed by Tom Hooper and based on the mega-selling, omnipresent musical based on the Victor Hugo's book. Les Mis tells the story of a man who is convicted of a crime and spends the rest of his life paying for it, essentially, in a nutshell. Rust, you're the only one who's gone to see this. I've got to say, to me, it looks dreadful. I mean, I said to Claire before, I think I'm a fan of musicals, but what I realised is I'm a fan of movie musicals. And generally, if a film's been adapted from the stage play, I like Chicago and Hair and loads of others, they generally stink. So, was this good?
I'm the same as you for a start. Well, no, actually, I'm not. I'm a fan of musicals in general, across the board. I like theatre musicals, like film musicals, no problem. But I agree that they have a extremely checkered past when going that way from theatre to film. I would say the exception recently has been something like Sweeney Todd that I really enjoyed. I thought that kind of worked. But I think the number one problem that you can normally throw at them almost without fail is the problem they have is they're just filmed versions of the musical. They're on stage but being filmed. There's a set created around them, and they're just filmed doing the songs and performing as they are. The Producer's a prime example with Nathan Lane.
Oh, that's dreadful.
Now, but you see, I can watch it because I enjoy it and I like musicals, but I'm not sat there going, "Wow, this is a thrilling film." Number two, if you don't like Les Mis, you're not going to like Les Mis. That's what I would suggest. There's a lot of people that have been going, "Oh, this is a rubbish film," but I would suggest that a lot of them maybe don't like Les Mis. Third, if you don't like musicals, you're not going to like Les Mis because, funnily enough, it is a musical. It's great. That's what I'm going to put out there. It is, as someone who loves Les Mis, as someone who loves the songs and knows the songs, which I think is just as important when going to watch something like this. It's a bit of a crazy experience. It's 2.5 hours, and Tom Hooper is hitting you over the head with Les Mis.
Grandiosity upon grandiosity.
For sure. I mean, you've never seen anything like it. It's musical excess. I mean, as much in the way he chose to shot it, which is, if you've seen The King's Speech, I mean, that's one of my main problems with Tom Hooper as directing of this, is that he basically has done what he did with The King's Speech on Les Mis. There's no, if this is going to be his directorial style, I'm not sure how many films it's going to last. Yeah, it worked for this one because it was all about the effort and the emotion, and it was done. It was extreme close-ups. It's negative space. It's veins popping. It's very shallow depth of field, and it's the same kind of colour palette as The King's Speech as well, with all those kind of strange muted colours kind of taken out of it. And so there were those kind of issues with it. But like I say, I sat there for 2.5 hours in a cinema that was actually probably the most excited cinema I've been in a very long time. It wasn't full. It was the Friday night it came out, and it didn't start till 8:15. So I get the impression the Saturday and Sunday matinees were busier. But there were tears. There was a round of applause both at the interval and at the end.
Wow!
So there were people sat in their chairs to the end of the credits singing along. It really these people loved it. Not singing along while the film, because that wouldn't be acceptable. I would have had to say something. Excuse me, madam. Can you please be quiet? But no. So there was no singing while the film was going on. I mean, what else to say? I mean, the other thing. There's been much talk about Russell Crowe and his part in the film. I would say that anyone that says Russell Crowe can't sing is a liar, because he can sing.
Okay.
He has got a perfectly viable voice, and he can sing. My only problem with him is that he is not a music theatre performer, and therefore his voice very much isn't up to standard. That was my problem with him.
He's in a band.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Having said that, I think he plays the character of Javert, who is this very stern, very serious police kind of chief, French chief of police, who is hunting Hugh Jackman's character of Jean Valjean throughout the years, to a dogged kind of degree. And so the only character that could potentially get away with not having that, slightly la-di-da, slightly musical theatre-y kind of, vibrato voice is him. And so that's why, for me, it doesn't ruin the film. It works. He is fine with it. You wish he would be slightly angrier with it and slightly more imposing with his voice, because he is an imposing figure, in self and in character. And so that's the only negative point. I mean, the other parts of it, all the other actors and actresses in it, do it to the A-star standard. You know, they can all sing, they're all brilliant. Eddie Redmayne was a standout, but he's been one on your list to watch for a number of years now in loads of films like Black Death, and he was in Birdsong on ITV as well, and he is a great actor, and he pulls out a great performance from this as well. And yeah, like I say, it's big, it's brash, but don't go and see it if you don't like Les Mis, because it's not going to turn your heart into loving it.
Have you seen the stage version?
I have seen the stage version.
So, I mean, obviously film and theatre is very different to each other, but is there any comparison that you can give to?
I mean, the only comparison you can give is, like I say, having seen both, and I often find that musical theatre often gets by on its, in theatrical style, on its sheer level of impressiveness.
Right.
You're there, you're watching something live, you're watching sets be created in front of you, just the sheer act of the singing and the voices, and that all kind of, it can often get by on that alone. And I think you can go there and you can actually not really follow the story and just kind of, sit there and listen to song after song after song and set piece after set piece. And I think what the film did a really good job of doing is getting the story across really well. It didn't lose it, because it is almost 100% sung. It's like an operetta, so even the bits that are conversationally are sung. I mean, there aren't huge swathes of it. There are smaller kind of sections, but it does a really good job of that. And the other thing it does a great job of doing, through the directorial style of it, is it puts you there. You can see the effort and the feeling and the emotion, which is often lost on stage, because unless you're sat in the stalls and you paid £100 for a ticket, then you're not necessarily going to get that. And so, like I said, I went to see it with my wife and mother and father-in-law, who are both kind of big theatrical fans. And I mean, my mother-in-law came out of it saying it's almost better than seeing it on the stage.
Wow.
Because she could hear every word. She knew what was going on. It was it was just that. It was staggering. It was great. I mean, Anne Hathaway's performance is great, and the fact she's up for supporting actress is right, because she is only in it for a very kind of short amount of time. But that song that everyone's talking about, "I Dreamed a Dream," is a very good song. Hugh Jackman does great. The makeup is great, because Hugh Jackman has to go from middle-aged, well, not necessarily, just less than middle-aged man, all the way up to kind of death. In it, and the makeup is very subtle but very real and very a credit to them for doing it so well. And so, like I said, I really enjoyed it. It was a cracking Friday night out, and if you like it, I could watch it again. I could sit there for 2.5 hours and watch it again, because it's about the music, and if you like that and you think that's up to a certain quality, then you're going to enjoy it. If you don't, then please don't watch it, because if you watch it, all you're going to do is tell someone else that it's rubbish and your opinion of musical hating people, which are fine. I've got no problem with that.
That's a really interesting point.
Yeah, I don't think people that don't like musicals should tell people this film is rubbish, because I would guarantee that if you like Les Mis, there's nothing to be disappointed about in this film at all.
Yeah, I think I'm going to see that now.
I gotta say, it's been a bit of a weird sort of couple of weeks with films, because I've seen Life of Pi very good, but also quite annoying in many ways. And there's been niggles and niggles, but what I've seen over the last couple of weeks, and going to the cinema about 4 or so times, is larger audiences,
big audiences,
than usual, and people really enjoying what they were watching. I mean, no matter what we thought of it, I'm not saying this for any other reason than it just suddenly struck me. Wow, I've been to cinema 4 times in a row, 5 if you sort of count James Bond. Full audiences, really enjoying a film, and I think it's.
It changes the feel of the film if you're sat there with a lot of other people. As long as everyone abides by the code, then you're fine.
Yeah.
Bloody right.
But like I say, no, I agree. It's been packed. It's been really busy, and that's great. Please keep going to it, because if you don't, people say, "Oh, I'm not going to the Mallard or wherever because it's not good enough." But if you don't go, it won't be there for long.
It does.
Look at HMV.
Yeah.
Simple as.
Prime example.
Anyway, so from the packed auditoriums of the Mallard Double Bill Cinema, we go to the lowly confines of sci-fi nerdom and sitting at home watching a Blu-ray. But don't worry, because the film is Dredd. It's the adaptation of 2000 AD's classic comic strip Judge Dredd. It's directed by Peter Travis, who made the quite unremarkable Vantage Point, but it's written by Alex Garland, who made the quite stunning, wrote the quite stunning Sunshine, 28 Days Later, Never Let Me Go. I think a bit of a British sci-fi renaissance, just a one-man machine. He also produced a film made in South Africa on a smaller budget than usual, but the result of that is an 18-rated science fiction film. Was it enjoyable?
Yeah, I mean, I've still have to confession, I've still got a couple of minutes left of it to watch. But I had to tear myself away from it to come here. But so far, I really got into it. I didn't. I wasn't a huge. I didn't read the comics very much, but I did see the Sty Stallone version, and everyone who I've spoken to said, "Oh, is it another version of this?" And I was like, "No, this is pretty good stuff." From my point of view, I mean, I thought was it Lena Headey looks like she's been on meth, and the city, as we were talking about before, looked as if it's right there on the edge of total annihilation, and it's a fantastic setting. Some fantastic script writing. I mean, not to get too into like taking anything away from the visuals, but just the way some of the plot is laid out and some of the character developments I thought were pretty good for sci-fi, something that sometimes people skip over to get to the action. This writer he's taken his time to actually plot down the reveals, little tiny reveals, which just made it for me.
I mean, what I quite liked about it, so yeah, I used to read the comics when I was a teenager. I haven't read many of them since. I do occasionally sort of dip into it. And I thought it really captured the idea, like you say, of a city that's just about to pop or crumble, or it's just on the brink of something really devastating happening. And I quite like that they've got that sort of feel of Judge Dredd, because there are some, like the Sly Stallone one, where it's all about massive buildings everywhere and future gadgets and gizmos. But there was really not much of that. It reminded me, as I said before, of the first Mad Max film, where something's happened, you're not quite sure why the world is it's almost sort of run down. And I thought it was great. I love the fact they didn't go, "This is Judge Dredd. Judge Dredd is blah 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 blah," and they didn't have any backstory. They just went,
No.
"Here's Judge Dredd. Judge Dredd, take out this psychic woman as your rookie and go in and pick a crime. One of, was it 6,000 an hour or whatever it was?
Yeah, literally said choose which one, rookie.
And go for it." And that's what the film did. And there was a lot. It was one of those films where there's a lot of background detail. There's a lot of sort of little. The cops sometimes say stuff about Dredd, so it's a bigger character than you're being shown, but they don't overdo any of it. I just love the fact they've ditched the whole massive eagles on the shoulders, sort of gone for a bit more of a rough and ready. I love the details, like all the cars are vans. They weren't, and didn't seem to be any cars. They're all just like square box-like vans, and it really, I thought, once I'm watching an entirely satisfactory film here.
Yeah, I mean, I think they, like you said, they did a great job of just paring it down to where it's almost 100% about Dredd. In terms of, I think he is the standout thing that you take away, and obviously it's called Dredd, but it sounds stupid, but we've been shown before how easy it is to get him wrong. With Sylvester Stallone, and with just a simple bit of miscasting and a stupid directorial decision or your editorial decision or whatever you want to call it. And here they've just got him so right in both the casting of Carl Urban, who is great. I was stood in the mirror for about 20 minutes afterwards trying to do the Dredd mouth, which I can't do the Dredd mouth very well. And so that shows just alone that achievement is great, because he does it throughout the entire film, and he just manages to, it's that classic thing of managing to convey a slight bit of emotion, but it's certain different feelings and so on through such a little bit of face that's on display underneath that helmet. And they just got it right. That's what was so great. Like I say, I know we've been waiting for at least 6 to 8 months to watch this.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
It didn't come over here on cinema, and we were waiting for it to come out on Blu-ray to watch it. And all the comparisons were made about it coming out at the same time as The Raid, and it is a very similar story, but
very different film.
Different film. That's what I mean. It's kind of, people say, "Oh, you've seen The Raid, you've seen this." No, you haven't. They're totally different films.
I'd say Dredd was more similar to something like Assault on Precinct 13, a kind of slow burn sort of movie, because it's an action movie, but it's not massively actiony.
It's not. It's
very
not
violent, but it's not a big. It's quite an odd movie to quantify, and I think it's because, like Sunshine and 28 Days Later, it's got a writer who knows how to plot stuff. It's got a guy who knows how to give you a ton of character information without. There's barely any exposition at all in this film. And I liked the role of Judge Anderson in the film as well. I thought that was really smart. I thought the casting of Mama was brilliant. I thought to have such a vicious female protagonist,
it's brilliant,
was really interesting, and you really got a sense of this kind of just this world, it really makes me want to see a sequel to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you think, God, you know, if they throw a match into that world, it will just blow up. And imagine seeing that city torn apart by some like Judge Death. Or,
I know it would be
stuff like that.
amazing.
It'd be
It's
brilliant,
the only worry is that whether it makes enough money on DVD
I
to boost it and get a sequel.
but
Because
I think it
there's
might.
a lot of fans out there that
there's-
couldn't
there'll be a
see it
lot of
because it was
work-
only brought out in 3D and so on in the
Mm.
UK, and it was really hard to get hold of a 2D copy. And so you hope that there's enough people there who love it enough to buy it on DVD. And like, you know, something like Taken, which is what happened with that. You
Yeah.
know, Taken
Yeah.
came out, everyone saw it, it got an extended cut, everyone saw that, and it got, unfortunately, it got Taken too. It's
Yeah.
not the exact model you want, but in terms of studios seeing that people want it and greenlighting it, then that would be the plan. Because like you said, it's not the most exciting film ever made, but it is a very well written and, you know,
Yes,
and
definitely.
directed. And if you like that character enough, he's going to pull you through it, and you're going to really enjoy it. Just talking about it now, I'd like to go and watch it again because it's that fondness
I'm
of
gonna
just,
watch
that,
it again
of
quite soon,
just
I
the
think.
character
Yeah.
to kind of go and watch it. So yeah, if you haven't bought a copy, please do. No illegal downloading this one. It is one that we need to go and buy and support it to kind of make sure a second one happens.
Nice, right, yeah. Okay, so that was our first episode of 2013. Be sure to follow us on the Guernsey Film Info page. We've also got YouTube account and the Twitter at Guernsey Film Info. But next time round, we'll review some other films because I haven't checked the list, so I don't know what it is. I'm not sure what's coming out soon. Wreck-It Ralph is soon.
Oh yeah.
Reckon
So
Yeah,
we'll
yeah.
be prob-
And Flight with Denzel Washington.
So hopefully in 2 weeks' time it might be Wreck-It Ralph and Flight if they've been released. No new films this weekend though, at Mallard I've noticed.
I'm going to catch up on the previous ones then.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you very much for listening.